Welcome to the Divergent AF podcast. I'm your host, Selena Thompson, a late diagnosed ADHD mother on a hashtag journey to unapologetic authenticity. Dive into the rabbit hole realness with me as we overshare unfiltered and relatable stories of what neurodivergent life is really like. Lifting the lid on the honest, hilarious, and heartbreaking topics typically confined to our inner monologue. Get ready to feel seen and heard as we ditch the to-do list, the daily planners, but most importantly, the shame. Welcome back to the Divergent AF podcast. I'm your host, Selena Thompson. This is episode 9. I am very honoured and excited to have a very special guest on for episode 9, Nat Chat, Dr. Natalie Mathews. She is a lecturer and a socialist. Oh my God, that was what I was not meant to say.
Tell them.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I've got to keep that in.
We're being haunted by socialism.
Oh my gosh. Okay, no, she is a social. Don't say the word. Okay, sorry about that. Dr. Natalie Mathews is a sociologist at Massey University, and we're laughing because I, in the past, have accidentally called her a socialist because it sounds very much the same, but not.
Oh, and the sneaky thing is that like one of the founding fathers is actually Karl Marx. So we can't just go, no, nothing to do with socialism whatsoever, because he's there too. Gosh,
that was a Freudian slip if there ever was one. Okay, anyway, moving along. I initially met Natalie at school as a school mum, which is very strange because I am extremely awkward with making friends with any school mums, but I think you can always spot your own in the wild, and here we are. So when I was talking to Natalie about what topic she would just love to info dump about and hash out, it was called Hermeneutics. Did I say that right?
You did say that right, yeah.
Hermeneutics, meaning making, aka hermeneutics. So I actually still don't know what that means, so I'm going to pass it over to you if you would like to open up this can of worms.
No, it's just like, how do you make sense of the world, of responses, of phenomena? Right, yep. Like, so an example I sometimes use in class is like, so the barista gives you your coffee and
timing of that,
and you have a sense of, whew, they're hot. Now, what do you do with that? Like, what sense do you make with that? If they are way outside of your normal type, does that unsettle your whole identity, right? If you were happily married, does that sort of unsettle you, or is that just kind of like, oh, this is something that can happen sometimes? Yeah. So, oh my God.
I told you to turn your notifications off.
I did on my computer and not on my cell phone. Oh, such a dick.
Such a dick.
Just how do you make sense of the world, right? Like, what scripts do you have? What words do you have? What narratives do you have to make sense of what is going on?
Okay.
And this can be pretty huge, right? So say if you're at uni and you worked really hard on an assignment and you were thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to get like high B's, maybe A's, and then you get a C minus. Like, what
story of my life, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you make sense of that, though, right? Do you say, like, you can imagine
stupid.
Yeah. So that's one, right? And that has consequences. Like, if you think, I'm stupid, I shouldn't be here, this is just proof that I'm stupid, then you might actually stop trying. You might actually drop out, right? And that has huge consequences.
Yeah.
Or you could be like me, and you could be like, yeah, but I did it the night before, and the tutor's probably a dick anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, or like, I didn't really try, right? So it's okay. Yeah. Or you could be one of those mythical virtuous people and be like, I clearly need to learn some skills here. What shall I work on to make things better the next time around?
Yeah.
But, like, same event, but you are interpreting it in wildly different ways. And the ways that you interpret it then have consequences for your sense of self, but also what you do next, and potentially, like, what the rest of your life looks like, right?
Yeah. So do you think that in terms of neurodivergent people, we have a habit of attributing situations very differently than probably a neurotypical?
Totally. I, you know how I went to your house a little while ago and my cell phone was out of action because
Oh,
it had
yes.
fallen in some water in the
Oh,
toilet.
yes, some water. It was really good branding for the toilet bowl. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I absolutely saw that as I am such a twit. Like, of course I did this because I am always careless and
Yeah.
I don't notice when I've got things in my pocket and I should pay more attention. And this is all because I am an inferior kind of human.
Yes.
And and my husband was very quickly like, oh yeah, oh no, I do that. I've done that. It's like you're
Like
not
end of story, move on. Like this stuff doesn't affect your self-esteem.
yeah. So it's very much like, so is this thing that happened, like, is this a symptom of what I am like as an inferior human, or is this just something that happens sometimes?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and I don't think once you've had those experiences where you're starting to wonder, am I a different kind of human? Every thing that might point towards that, like it becomes a symptom, capital S, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like COVID is a really good example of where normal things can be suddenly understood in radically different ways. And
Yeah.
it's kind of creepy, right? When you're like, oh, I've got a cold, and someone's like, that's a symptom, capital
Yeah.
S. And it's the same phenomena, but the interpretations, like the resources you've got to interpret it, and the pressure to interpret it in one way or another have
Yeah.
become completely different. And so now your actions and your sense of self and everything go off in that direction when normally they would go off in a completely different direction. And COVID was one of those weird times where the resources that we had for making sense of the world, and when I'm talking about COVID, I'm talking about like when COVID was new and we had lockdowns and we were coming out of lockdowns.
And it was
And all of
it was
normal-
like having leprosy. It was just this huge deal. Whereas, when we frame it as a cold or a flu, it's just so different.
yeah, or like I cough, right? Like, oh
Yeah.
no, I breathed in saliva as I often do, and now I'm coughing, and I need to reassure everyone that I'm not about to kill them all with my germs. And just the meaning of that little thing changed so much. And
Yes,
kind of
you're right.
like after lockdowns was really weird, where the normal resources you have for understanding the world, you've got to sort of stop and question those and reevaluate. Like, what is the new meaning of coughing?
I always get this real awkward coughing fit at the most inconvenient time.
Yeah.
I'll be at some kind of engagement party around the food and suddenly I inhale a cracker and it's just like, and then when you let it out, it's like, I'm not sick, everyone. I'm not sick, everyone, because everyone is just so sick. COVID, get away from me.
Yeah, so it's like, what is the meaning of that cough? Can I give another example? I love it.
Please take over because I'm still wading through this. So you can take the lead on this.
Well, so I teach a paper on gender at the moment.
Yeah.
And so one of our weeks is sex. And so I've had my students tell me about the sex ed that they are encountering now. And it's really different between schools, and it's, some of it's quite similar to what we had and some of it's quite different from what others had.
Yeah.
So one of the things that some of my male students were apparently told is that erections are kind of random, right? Like they don't have to mean something. So they went out and they sort of they had to be told explicitly, like, this is just going to happen sometimes. So if you get an erection next to your grandma, don't worry, you're not into your grandma. And so what I loved about this is that I could totally imagine where you're like, what if I am into grandmas?
Oh gosh, yeah, add it to the list of things to overthink.
Yeah, so what's the meaning behind this random occurrence? And if you don't have that explanation that sometimes this just happens, then you can imagine how like trying to make sense of that could mess you up.
Or you may be a pedophile.
Whatever, right? Yeah. And so like a big part for a lot of people, I think, after diagnosis is going back over their lives and being like, I thought that meant this, but I can see how this connects to the broader pattern that I've now identified.
Yes, I feel like for a lot of people, including myself, when you get a diagnosis, especially later on in life, you kind of, what I felt like it was almost like doing an Apple update where you look back through your whole life, all these little patterns and behaviors, and it was like, oh, I'm dumb or I'm lazy, forgetful. Suddenly it's all making sense and it's, kind of rebooting.
Yeah.
and re-updating your brain and kind of like the narratives and the dots and the connections. It's a long process. I mean, I still get random memories pop up and it's like, oh, that makes sense now.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Same. I got one on Facebook where I was whining about the neighbour's music because I can't tune music out.
No.
And so if the neighbour is listening to music, my head is listening to music and singing along to that music, no matter what else I was going to be doing that particular day.
Yeah.
And it makes me so grumpy because I would like to think my own thoughts and I don't want to be that susceptible to the world.
Yeah.
But when if I ever say that to people, they're just like,
just block it out.
What's with that?
Just block it out, you know?
Yeah, I know. So I just didn't understand why no one else got so angry about other people's music, like the way that I get angry about other people's music. Am I just a horrible, mean person that doesn't want other people to have fun?
I'm just sensitive.
Also,
I'm very sensitive.
Yeah.
You know?
So, yeah, I got one of those Facebook memories. It's like, yes, you don't know that other people can block that out.
Exactly, and that the noise, sensory overwhelm is just like a very normal part of it. But back then, when you're kind of the only one talking about or thinking it, you're like, oh God, I'm just like, there's something wrong with me. Like,
yes.
Like,
you know. By the way, we've not given your audience the context that I have ADHD.
Yes, I actually was thinking that 5 minutes ago. Yeah, that's a really important point. Yes, so Natalie has ADHD. I never told you this story, but when we were first communicating, so this is a tangent, everyone, but it was like the first term holidays, and we had both written notes and to give to our daughters to exchange.
Yeah.
But I don't think I checked the backpack until like the very last week of the holidays. And I'm not sure if you'd messaged first and I got it, but the message you'd sent, I'd love to dig it up. It was so formal, Natalie. Do you remember what you said to me?
No. I remember it was terrible writing on a scrap.
Oh, it was so professional. It was Morena Selena. And then it was just so, oh my gosh, I need to dig this up. And I saw this, I'm like, whoa, this is why I'm not friends with mums. You know, I'm just going to drop an F-bomb and I'm so casual and this is so not me.
Really? So I remember that you had left a note to Evelyn on a nice piece of paper and mine was on a random scrap of a notebook that I had taken out. Like,
don't you love how, like, you get so worried about like your own actions? I don't even remember the note. I just remember your text message and I saw that and I'm like, this is so formal. This is really scary. I don't think I can do this mum school thing. And anyway, I think I took like nearly like 5 days to reply, right?
Yeah.
And then you sent an even longer one and then I didn't reply and then you rang me and I was like, oh Jesus, I'm not picking up. And you left this voice message and this is how I knew you were ADHD. This is when I'm like, okay, I can hang out with her. Because you'd been like, hi, sorry. Yeah, I just thought it'd be easy to ring. Well, maybe not ring, actually. Maybe you don't want to talk on the phone. So yeah, I just thought like we could do a catch up if you want to. You don't want to, we don't have to. And I could just hear the imposter syndrome and the RSD just dripping from your voice. And so I went on to the ADHD community Facebook page and I searched you and I'm like, she's one of us.
Did you?
Yes. And then I was like, hey, want to meet up? Let's do a play date. That's how, because I could see the pattern of behavior and then I interpreted your very formal message with thinking, oh, this is how school mother should write a really lovely communication to someone. And I knew that you were actually just trying to do that. Yeah. But in the process, I'm like, no, like, I am like a real one. Please don't do that to me. But when I saw it for what it was, it's like, you're masking. Good job.
Okay, well, I saw from you. You were like, oh, I'm sorry I didn't reply to you. I had a stomachache. You actually had a stomachache.
Was it a stomachache?
Yeah, you said I had like a stomach thing. I remember because I was at the Howick Historic Village when I got the text. And I was like, oh, she wasn't ghosting me. She had a stomachache. And after I like properly sat down with you, I was like, I don't think she had a stomachache.
God, you know, you've got to pull out a reason about why you don't want to, like, you just are like, well, this has just been a really painful thing to reply to. You can't say that.
Yeah.
A stomachache. Jesus. Yeah. I like to think that I've really, like,
a stomach bug. Like.
Yeah.
Like an ongoing stomach
like vomiting. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I just was like, I don't know how to reply to this because I'm so intimidated by this formal language and this going on a play date with this woman feels like I'm going to put my hand slowly into a blender. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Anyway, we made it. We made it through after some good PI
Oh, I don't
investigating.
think
But no, it was
anyone's
because
ever
of your
told me that
voicemail.
talking to me is going to be like putting their hand in a blender before.
No,
That explains a lot,
slowly.
actually.
Slowly. But anyway, we
Oh,
both have
really?
ADHD and we both go on tangents and we both live life from one disaster to the next, pretty much. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back into the main event.
Right, yeah. No, so
Yeah.
how do you make sense of the world, right?
Yeah.
And so what I think is really interesting is that all this discussion of neurodivergence, so not just ADHD, but autism, but like, and all of the in-betweens, right? Like people, because it's so common in these circles for people to be kind of like seeing connections between them and just not accepting these little categories as the end of the story. But I think what's really interesting about it is also just highlighting how the normal ways of making sense of the world that we sort of just inherit from media and conversations and interactions and everything, just how bad that is, like how completely limited all of the explanations that are floating around for behaviour in people's lives actually are. They're so limited. Like the resources that I had for understanding what I was like and how to be better, they were not only really bad for me, and that's like this universal experience, right? That people are like, oh my God, like it's like I've got the manual for the wrong operating system. Or
You do, yeah.
you know, that's like that individual level because there is a difference there. But I think also the manual for everybody is so bad. Like it's just nobody is that perfect human that we're like, oh man, everyone else is and we're not.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely not the same thing as saying, oh yeah, everyone's a bit ADHD and, you know, there is no difference. I think there are, like, but these areas where the difference is so pronounced that you need to have a word for it and actual, like, formal recognition and moves to try and address that difference. Like, this is where it also highlights the limitations of these narratives and these ideas everywhere else also.
Yeah, I think it's about this is what I'm trying to do because I understand what you mean. It's like there's just not enough or not many people, especially in New Zealand, I find like talking about the personal experience of living it. It's quite a vulnerable place to be in because I think you always think you're the little weirdo and no one else does these things. But when you are open, you realise we're all doing this really secretly. So
when I first joined a ADHD Facebook group, and I don't actually listen to them anymore because they're so busy. They're so overwhelming.
It's so distracting.
I dip in occasionally, but there's just so much there.
I know. It's a treasure trove. I know.
When I first dipped into this, so I was diagnosed 2020, so sort of like late diagnosis, slightly before the huge, like I think the
wave,
yeah. But I first was like, so I wonder if this is what ADHD is like, or if this is just where people are okay to be honest. Like, this is just everyone's like, I can't put away dishes, I can't do, and maybe this is just like everybody is failing and nobody ever admits it. And actually it's both, right? Like it's that this is chronic and this becomes such an issue with ADHD people. But probably everyone fails a little bit. But it's that huge process of like working out like what's normal, what's not, right? Like what's just being honest. Or there's those moments where you sort of try to explain something and you're expecting I know, me too. And people just look at you like, what?
Yeah, you've really got to read the room and pick your audience.
But you don't know because people, until very recently, I think people didn't talk about any of this stuff. Right?
No, it's this, like, honestly, all these little things that I used to think were like personality traits or just defects or flaws, I realise it's actually a very common theme among a lot of us. So I'm trying to, now I can't think of a really good example, but we always have talks and it's like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm doing that too. But you think it's this real, like, niche, weird thing.
Yeah, like sitting weirdly.
Yes, sitting weirdly, how we just, like have to sit, like, I'm actually doing quite well today, but, we usually, like, you're sprawled out, like, on a beanbag at work.
Yeah.
And with bad posture, and that to you is like, oh, your comfort. and you just think you're just like this weird person with bad posture and you can't, be professional. But then you realise actually we're all like secretly doing that. You like usually I'd be like, oh yeah, like on the floor. Like my favourite is being cross-legged and then like completely leaning down like that. I don't know if that's good for my back, but it just feels so natural, like a frog. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah,
you
I
just
tuck my legs
these
under me
little
like I'm a little sort of
invisible,
cat
like
loafing.
it's your little inner monologue. But when you start talking more and more, you realise we are all very, very doing these secret little things, and it's actually a part of it.
Yes. And I think sometimes it really is just like a human thing that no one has talked about yet. But I also think then people need to talk about it, because this is part of the bullshit, is that people don't talk about all these little, let's call them quote unquote failures, right? Like people don't talk about all these little bits where we don't do what we should.
Let's rebrand them quirks.
Quirks, sure.
Like all these things.
Yeah. And after a while, it's kind of, it's the pattern that enables you to think, oh, maybe it's this. And once you've got that framework, then suddenly everything springs into focus and you're like, that was this, right? Just like, again, like if you've been sick, right, and you've got a little sniff at the back of your throat, and over the course of a normal day, you might get that because you're sort of slightly hay feverish like I am or whatever, and then it'll go away and it was nothing.
Yeah.
And so, like, any one moment, it's like, oh, what does this mean? And then after a while, when there's been a bunch of other moments, you're like, right, that conforms to this pattern here, and now I know what's going on, I think.
Yeah. Do you think that it also gives you kind of just reassurance, and even I would say like confidence, when you can kind of have, I guess, an answer? And when I look back at when I look at my daily life of things I do or don't do, which is a lot, and you can see it's all neurodivergent related, it's just kind of like, like this is just normal this is normal for us. And I mean, that's why I'm trying to do this podcast where we talk more about our personal experiences, because I don't think there's enough content of it out there. I mean, there's a lot of like how-tos, like how to fix it, how to manage it. But I don't know about you, but I just don't even go there, because like I won't keep it up, and then I'll just feel like a shitty ADHD'er.
Absolutely.
Like I can't even be a good ADHD'er, so like I'm not even going to try, But like if I talk to someone, okay, like this is an example, and I don't know, you might do this, but when you run out of loo roll, but then every time you go, it's like you still haven't replaced it, and you still haven't replaced it, and it's actually quite inconvenient when you live alone now. It's not actually a big job to go and get some and put there, but do you know things like that?
Yeah. I had this bastard hose end yesterday, because what I normally do is I look at something and I think, I'm going to put that away. And then I don't. But part of my mind is kind of categorized that intent to put away is actually putting away. So I walk back again, it's like, oh, it's still there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put it away. And I walk, and in my mind it's all solved. And I come back, it's still there. It's like, no, I am sure I put that away. But clearly I didn't, because it was still there. And I had this nasty end of a hose piece. And I remember, like, I memorized in my mind, like, putting it away. And then it turned out the bastard rolled back onto the grass again. Like, now you're just messing with me. That's cruel.
I know. You should have seen my house yesterday. I did that with a peanut butter spoon. Like I made a smoothie in the morning. And then by nighttime, this damn peanut butter spoon is sitting on the bench. And I'm like, who does this? It was me.
Yeah.
Put it away. It wasn't until there was an ant situation. And I'm like, just like, was it that hard to do this?
It's just also really annoying when it's something that's really clear that you haven't done something for a very long time. So like coffee pucks, like the puck is like this little disc of coffee grounds after you've made your coffee.
Yeah.
And so I've been putting them in a place, intending to take them up to the worms. And so I know that I feel like I've just put them out, but clearly I haven't, because there are now like 10 coffie pucks there.
Yeah.
And I don't drink that many coffees a day. So there is evidence that I didn't do this thing. Anyway, I feel I am diverging.
Yes. What is the Divergent AF podcast?
Yes.
But let's diverge back.
Indeed. Right. So, like, how do you explain your life, right? Like, how do you explain then this accumulation of, like, why is your toilet roll still there? How do you explain that? Right?
Yeah. So usually, there could be a few reasons, but usually it's internalized to you're lazy, you're forgetful, you're a bad person and a bad human being.
Yep, absolutely. I am so fascinated about this idea of executive function. And
Yes.
it's so, like, and clearly a lot of other people are. I actually did a little experiment before this where I went through my Facebook ads for about half an hour and just saw all of the things, like looking at the language of all these, this app will solve your entire life things that I kept on
Oh,
getting.
yes.
And, like, executive functions really plays a big part in those, right? And I actually went to a symposium,
What's a symposium?
conference.
A symposium? That sounds
Symposium.
so formal.
I don't actually. Now that I'm forced to say this out loud, I couldn't neatly tell you what the difference between a symposium and a conference is. The topic was neurodiversity, but executive function was real big on the workshops that were available also. So there were lectures in the workshops and just people returning to this idea. Like this is groundbreaking for people. And I think part of that is that people with ADHD have nasty executive function. I'm saying nasty because I didn't want to swear there, but there we go. It challenges executive function far more than the general population. But the general population also doesn't even know that executive function is a bloody thing. And for me,
no, I feel like it's automatic. It's like blinking and breathing to them. It's so like not a conscious thought, their executive function. Because there's no, like, they just don't, it's not faulty. It's so unconscious, they just don't even think about it. It's like, you just do it. Just do it.
Well, I think a lot of it is offloaded into like the not conscious parts of people's brains. And that's actually how I tend to think of neurodiversity is like what can't get offloaded, right? Like I've got autistic friends that are like, I'll look like I'm having a great conversation, but I'm thinking about it all the time. Yeah. And so that conversational, those elements of conversation aren't offloaded into the back of their mind so they can just get on with it. It's just there in their heads. I've got a dyslexic friend who reads the same way. Like she can read, she can write. You would never tell from her writing that she's dyslexic, but she's thinking about it all the time. And so we're thinking about these executive function things in a way I think that's quite atypical. And it's absolutely draining, and it means that you don't necessarily have the resources available to use the rest of your brain at that given moment.
No. And then just to get through a normal human day is exhausting.
My mind has just gone blank. Absolutely, it's exhausting, and you can't do other things, and it drains away at you. Actually, I do an exercise in workshops when I've done workshops on this topic that is designed to give people a sense of what it's like to have that your brain taken up. One of my favourite books in the world is Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. And so he starts with this exercise that's designed to tax people's directed attention. And it's a sequence of numbers. It sounds like torture, and this is the point, right? It's like a light torture. So you've got the sequence of numbers, and then I say, okay, now I want you to add 1 to each of these digits. And so I say, okay, every moment on the beat, and again. And again. And it's horrible, right? And so different people, you could imagine if you're really good at remembering things, then you could have a longer sequence, you could add 3 instead of 1.
Or if you don't need to count on your fingers like I do.
No, you're not allowed to count on your fingers. You're not allowed to count on your fingers.
Well, then I would fail, and I'd feel like a bad human.
The idea is to make people fail. And so have the sense then of this finite resource that, get a sense of how finite it is, right? Yeah. And he says in his book that you can actually see this in people's pupils. So you get people to, you focus on the pupils and you get people to do this. And their pupils are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, their effort, and then they just relax when the people give up. And it's very cool. But so the point of this, though, is that I get people to do this. And then I was like, so what was that like? And they are universally like, that was torture. That's, most people are like, I gave up partway through. Let's say you've got a really, a tricky thing to learn now. Can you do it? And you can feel, no, I can't. I absolutely can't. Now, what about if you tried harder, right? What if you really, really, really try? And the point of it is that you can't try your way out of it. It's just like if you've ever done, muscle exercise at the gym.
A long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
In a past life.
I used to go to a gym that was, they would sequentially exercise muscles to the point of fatigue, right? That's the point, is that you'd go until you can't go anymore. Yeah. Have a tiny bit of a break and go until you can't go anymore.
Until you're shaking and
Exactly. And you can sort of almost probably conjure that feeling now of when your
Yeah.
muscle died, when you're like when it
Yes.
fatigued and you just couldn't do anymore. People have this weird idea like effort can just grow indefinitely. Like you can always try
Yeah,
harder,
mental
right? Like
effort
I'm
is
trying, yeah, okay, do
yeah,
it harder though.
yeah,
And so really like giving people just that experience of like, okay, go on, you
yeah.
try harder, and them just feeling at that moment like, oh no, I physically can't. And it's physical, like it's an absolute
Your brain,
limit that you can't think.
as we say to each other, my brain can't brain right now.
Yeah,
When it's like when I'm talking to you and like you've just had a really big day of braining at university and you're just like, because it
yeah,
is like you're just so fatigued,
yeah, absolutely.
but you can't show anyone your fatigued brain.
Yeah, and
Except,
anything to do with brains. People, I think, it's got this weird status of being not quite real.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like, oh, I'll just snap out of it then. Why
yeah,
not? People
yeah,
forget that brains are bodies, like part
yeah,
of bodies, and they have limits and they have characteristics. And
yeah.
instead, it's just this sort of myth of this sort of eternal consciousness that can just push past all that. And
Yeah, you just need to find the right Pinterest quote and the right
yeah,
app,
absolutely.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, so for me, so I had one of the most valuable experiences I had was during lockdown before I was diagnosed, where I was at home with a 2-year-old,
Mm.
and being a parent is so much harder than being an academic. And
It
I'm
is.
not,
It is. No, it is. But I honestly find, I actually, on a side note, think this is why a lot of mothers get diagnosed when they become mothers, because that's when the fatigue really kicks in, especially when if you're trying to work and brain, that's when it just falls to pieces.
it's awful.
Yeah.
I've got a metaphor for it, but it's one that nobody will get unless they are a very particular kind of person. Did you
Try us.
did you
Try
ever
us
play
all.
Doom, Selena? Back in
Doom.
high school when you were probably just hanging out with other real humans rather than playing stuff.
Not
Doom?
like no, I was like wagging, not going to sports day.
Right.
No, Doom, okay.
Yeah.
Enlighten me,
See,
enlighten
this is
us.
it's such a perfect metaphor, but if you don't play Doom, then you don't get it.
No, just do it. Just try us. Some people might.
Oh,
Just
and
say
that
it,
sounds going to sound
Natalie.
rude.
Come on,
So
Nat Chat.
basically, like, so every time you get shot, he's like, ugh. And then, like, that's damage, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then he can walk on slime, and it's like, ugh, ugh.
Oh, okay. No, no, no. Okay, I don't know what it was called, but yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
And then, yeah, trying to do both at once. It was lava, right? Like, so you can walk on slime, and then you can go and like have the health pack and recover yourself. But you
yeah,
can't actually remember how you recovered health and Doom. But I remember you could.
yeah,
But like this was just like lava, right? I could just feel it like drain, like like
yeah,
just draining, like eroding me,
yeah,
dissolving me so quickly, and like to the point that you couldn't recover it simultaneously. Like you were just
yeah. On the go. Yeah,
down.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, so it's. I mean, the funny thing is that like if you've got a brain that works well with academic stuff, then academic stuff often isn't like that. It's just nice. Like it's
yeah.
just like you're doing something that you enjoy doing,
It's
and
easy and more automatic mode.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's just
yeah.
pleasurable. And so people always like, oh, that must be the hard thing, and then like cleaning your room is the easy thing, obviously. But
I know, right? It's funny when you stop and think and like, I don't know why there's a focus on. Do you feel like do you feel like things that make you a good mum or a good person are all these executive function things? It's about like having a nice home or having a stocked pantry or like cooking or putting
organizing everything.
yeah, and it's like, oh no, but I can probably find anything out about anyone in 5 minutes and ruin their life because I'm actually an unpaid PI, or I can research any topic and become a doctorate in it just because I feel like it today.
Yeah.
Like that, no one even wants to know about that. Like, it's like, yeah, well, did you put your laundry away?
About my stalking. It's not fair.
No, it's like, well, did you put your laundry away today? It's just this inherent, like, no, but like, we're really good at this.
But it's also like a different category of task. So when I found out about task switching, I was like, holy shit, that's it.
That's
Right?
it, eh?
It's
Yeah.
not that attending to my 2-year-old was harder than writing a piece of feedback or something. It's that it happened at random moments. I could never do one thing and just do that thing because I have to switch to something else. Whenever she just happened to decide to make a noise or want something, or the thing that keeps her happy every other time just suddenly doesn't because...
Yeah, I realised, and I've got a lot of awareness now, that when I struggle with parenting, it's essentially because of task switching.
Yes.
Because, yeah, you can parent, but God forbid you try and do anything else. That's how it feels. Like, I just can't.
Yeah.
Or I could try and I will get snappy. I'll get exhausted. I'm not good for anyone. Yeah. And it's the task switching because, you're trying to write an email and then it's snack time or something. And then you sit back down, you're like, okay, where was I? Like in the zone. And then suddenly it's like another interruption. And then the more it gets back, and then you just get so frustrated. And it's like, you're just trying to reply to like an email that's going to be very basic, but you just are like, stop. It's like bunny hopping. You're like, and it's like you're not getting up the hill. You're just going back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so just like, oh my God, why can't I just do this?
And that's the question, right? Like, why can't you just do this? What resources do you have to try and get your head around the fact that task switching is a huge cost?
Huge. Well,
like if you hadn't looked into ADHD, what would you think is happening?
I used to be like, I'm just overwhelmed and I'm stressed and I need Valium and it's me, my fault, because everyone else is just like, just multitask, just take some breaths and just multitask. And I'm like, do you do that glitch, the ADHD glitch, when like you need to go somewhere, but then you need to go, and you're like, it's like that. Like, I don't know, it's horrible, but didn't you say that when you were going through lockdown, we need to finish that story.
Oh, yeah.
That you had researched methodically, okay, what are some methods that can get me through a day?
Yeah, so I was ruined by the end of the day. Like, in particular, the first one when I was trying to also work, and usually that meant trying to either task switch throughout the day and then also like do work that requires me thinking and making decisions. Like marking is the huge one, right? Because it's not just like knowing stuff, it's like evaluating people and making decisions about what to do with them.
Yeah. And it's like high level cognition. It's not just like, you've got to be in the game,
Well, it's mean to people if you're not, right?
I don't want to be mean. It's important. It's important because you've really got to like really.
If you're like, whatever, I'm tired, have it minus whatever. Like, it's not.
It's good. It's good to know that you're a nice lecturer. I'm sure a lot of people just don't care, but we care, and we care a lot. Okay.
Yeah, we care a lot.
We do.
No, it genuinely matters, right? But yeah, and so I was a wreck at the end of the day, like an absolute wreck. And I was like, okay, right, well, let's try to work out some ways to not be a wreck at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right. So, and every day it was like a new strategy to try things. It's like, okay, here are some tasks that I can set up for my child so that she might do something for more than a few minutes at a time. Here is meditation, I know is good. I have a history with meditation. Like, I actually enjoy meditating. So, which I realize is super unusual for ADHD people. Not for too long, like for little bursts, but
I still can't do it.
I got into it when I was towards the end of my PhD and I was losing my mind. I think the thing about it for me is, so for mindfulness meditation, a 10-minute meditation, I feel the difference. And that for me is a huge thing.
So I guess for me, mine is journaling. It gets it out of my head. Once these like thoughts are out of my head, then it feels like I've cleared it out. But trying to be quiet and I guess sit with it doesn't work for me.
So yeah, you don't sit with it. You just sit with like the feel of breath, or the sound of leaves, or whatever your one thing is.
Oh man, I'm just too much in my head. I've really tried.
Yeah. No.
And then I just feel like I'm a shitty meditator. I'm a shitty meditator, so I'm not going to do it. It's like, man.
No, it's super common, and I think
I thought you were going to say it's super easy. I was like, I'm going to come to you. Like, do not say you just do it. Like, oh my God. Thank you for tuning into episode 9 of the Divergent AF podcast. To be honest, I've actually had to split this up into 2 parts because I did promise my listeners when I started this podcast that I would never do an episode longer than an hour, because who the hell has the time to listen to that? So make sure you tune in to part 2 while Dr. Natalie Mathews and I still struggle to make meaning of the world.